Welcome to FAQ 12. My name is Ms. Hadi, and I'm going to be helping you understand how to analyze documents and also why. So first thing you need to know is that on the AP World History Modern exam, which you're taking in 10th grade, you're going to be asked to write an essay called a document-based question, where you have to look at a number of documents and answer a question in essay form. So you have to get really good at analyzing documents and quickly. So on the PowerPoint I'm going to give you, there's an explanation of an acronym called FIA, which is an easy way to remember 4 ways to analyze a document, not for content, but for things that can affect the document. And then there's a deeper analysis of documents. So I've already opened those links. I'm going to go ahead and click on the deep analysis first, because that's the one I want you guys to really think about. So the first thing is that you're going to have to think about the document in 2 ways. So there are lots of kinds of documents. A document doesn't have to be written. It could be a picture, it could be realia, which are things you can touch and feel, which you'd probably get a picture of on the AP World History exam. It could be a graph, it could be all kinds of things, diaries. So first you want to know, what does this piece of evidence, because a historian would treat it as evidence, tell me about history? So if you find a cup, this might be, oh, history of pottery. They had pottery in that society. They used it to store food, so maybe they were agricultural. We don't know. So you might be able to infer or guess things about that society based on what you see. You know, if they had a writing system, you're like, oh, they had a record-keeping system. Okay, so first you're like, okay, well, what does that tell me about society? And I think about my inspect theme category. You know, remember the inspect chart I taught you, where IN stands for interactions between humans and the environment, S stands for social, P political, E economic, C for cultural, which includes religion, and T for technology. Well, they obviously had pottery, so you know this is really important technology that they had. So that would go, you're looking for things that have to do with that theme, and you can say something about that theme based on what you see. So content tells us, what does the document or the object tell us about that society? So in the document, what's the point it's trying to make if it was written? What is it saying? What is it not saying? How could a historian use that document or that piece of realia to describe history, to talk about that society? So there's the obvious way of using the document to write history or to say something about history. That's one thing we're going to look at. Then everything else we're going to look at from here on out is going to be things that question the document we're looking at, the piece of evidence we're looking at, or the object. So we might think about, you know, the person who, if it's a written document, who wrote the document, what does their choice of medium, whether it's a picture or a diary, reveal about their potential purpose or intent? Then we want to think about authorship. Who wrote the document or who made the piece of art? And what's their connection with whatever it is they're sharing? Let's say it's an artist sharing about a war. Well, if they were on the losing side, they might portray it differently than if they were on the winning side. So who the author is really affects what is portrayed. And we want to think about the document being limited potentially, or biased potentially, or having a certain viewpoint. And we're thinking about who made it or who wrote it, if they're from a high level of society, a low level of society in terms of socioeconomic levels. So think about that person's ethnicity, race, culture, their religion, their position in society economically, any experiences they've had, their occupation in life. So for example, if they're the head of epidemiology, which is about the study of diseases, and they say something about COVID-19, we might trust them more than if they're just someone who has no expertise in that field. Or we might trust them, you know, less, because maybe their audience, which we'll get to later, they're trying to impress them. But we want to know as much about that person as we can, because something about them, like their religion, their ethnicity, their political affiliation, their distance between what they're talking about and who they are, their ability to know that language. So for example, it's a Greek person, but they're in Persia, but they don't speak Persian, and they're trying to communicate something about Persia, they might be wrong. So their limitations are going to influence whether we trust the document or not. So for example, if I have a diary entry from someone and it says the Persians were mean, but that person never went to Persia and they don't speak, you know, the ancient Persian language, they may not know. Other things you're going to look for are purpose, which is, you know, why this document or thing was created. Historical situation, what was happening at the time that might influence this document. Was there a war at the time? Who is it written for? That might influence it. If I'm writing for a best friend, that's going to be different than if I'm writing for a speech to convince people to vote for me. And then what other things might be not being mentioned in the document?